if you have a trust land, does it mean a trust land you cannot even have a forest domicile within a trust land?
Of course you can.
Of course you can in the first place,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
And who really owns this trust land? Is it not the prerogative of the government?
It's a community land.
But of course, every land here in the country is a property of the government.
It is held in trust of the Narok people.
Okay.
This decision, it is the Narok County Council that determined what they needed to do with it. And the determination they made is that they made it available for people to be able to purchase. And that is how people went to government land office and paid for the land.
Just a moment. So, and the Masai forest, actually, it is within Narok County.
Which one? Masai forest?
The Masai Mao.
Asking me the bar so that I can respond.
Okay.
So can I respond to that question as I respond to a few others? First of all, what you read by way of intro is what's actually in the Nation editorial, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. Because in principle, it covers all the principal issues that need to be covered. And it, in fairness, I think it is quite balanced. Secondly, and I'll come back to explain that question of trust land, we must agree, and Senator Matangi, I want to respond to you and Senator Cheruiyot, that it is true that when you hold a title deed, it should mean something. Because it's a document that is issued by the government.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we live in a country where there are many and there are hundreds of times when people get titles irregularly because of corruption and because of other considerations by human beings within government. And when that happens, that is the situation contemplated by Article 40, Sub-Article 6. It is important to establish how you acquire that property.
What is the process?
Otherwise, you know, we live in a country where even right now, you know, part of Karura forest were unlawfully excisioned. You know, part of Ngong forest was unlawfully excisioned. In fact, you know that even KICC was purported to be transferred to a political party irregularly. It had to take the outrage, the collective outrage of this country for it to be restored as a public entity. And therefore, this is not the same as the land I own in Rarieda, Aaron Cheruiyot, for two reasons. The land in Rarieda is ancestral land. It is not a trust land. Secondly, our land in Rarieda is not a water tower. In fact, it is almost a semi-arid area if you've been to Rarieda. So that is very important. Now, coming to this, therefore, is it enough for us to say that you can't remove the people there because you know, they are poor and there are some rich people with land there, as Dr. Halwale was saying? For me, first, when you are mentioning that somebody owns land in the Mao, as you are doing, you know, Senator Cheruiyot, you should table that evidence. Otherwise, you are unfair to that person and you are unfair to this station. And when Dr. Halwale mentions all those lists of people, you should also table it. And for me, once you've tabled it, who acquired part of that forest irregularly should be affected, rich or poor. So what you are doing is saying, in fact, the list is not, as is being said, you have, you know, additional names. I think they should throw it in there so that we recover the land collectively. Thirdly, when, and I've not read that report in detail, although I remember its summaries, when then you say, as Senator Wamatengo was saying, quoting the report, that the land has never been surveyed or gazetted, then that starts to speak to the inquiry I was talking about. Because if the land has not been surveyed, then the question must be asked, how did you get a title of unsurveyed land? Because in this country, for you to get any title, there must be a survey process. And there are areas in this country where the survey has not been done. There are large chunks where the survey has been done. So if the area has not been surveyed, then you cannot get it. And the argument that because it is not surveyed, then it cannot be claimed to be government land or public land is false. Under Article 62, any land, let me explain. There's a principle of what we call reversionary. Any land in this country that is not private land, that is not community land, gazetted or not gazetted, is presumed to be public land under the principle of reversionary in Article 62, 1C. It is a well-known land principle. But even more importantly, if you look at 62, 1D, basically any land for which no owner can be established by any legal process is presumed to be public land, is presumed to be government land under the old constitution. Right now it would be public land. So if no survey has ever been done, then the claim by government in terms of it being a public land is higher than otherwise. Now let me come to the last point, which is the question you've asked. Trust land. There are two aspects in terms of trust land. There's trust land under Article 62, which falls for description as public land. That trust land is held by national government but administered by the National Land Commission. Then there's trust land, which falls under Article 63, which is trust land in the context of community land. That community land is held by the county government but administered by the National Land Commission.
That is what this is.
The exception is this. And I read to you Article 62. Public land includes, straight to 1G, government forests. From what I've gleaned on in this report, the forest, the 22 blocks, were declared government forests by what these people are calling proclamations and legal notices and associated boundaries plans. Not gazetted, but declared by these processes. Government forest. Then water catchment areas. I don't think anybody can doubt and argue that the Mau, those blocks, is a water catchment area. All those fall as public land. Now, the reason the Narok County government will not have a role, and I read this to you, is when you come to 63 to Roman 3. The trust land that is described there is said to not including any public land held in trust by the county government under that 62.2. So all those which fall under 62.2, and if you look at 62.2, 62.3, the ones classified under 1F to M, let me make it simple. It is true that Narok County, like any other county, can have trust land. But that does not include the ones that I've read in 62, a water catchment area and government forest. That's what makes Mau public land, not community land. My last point is this. Senator Wamatangi made a legitimate point. And I suspect that if the politicians stop pontificating and focused on what needs to be done, we might actually find a solution. It is true, as Dr. Boni Halwale was saying, and I remember very clearly in 2009, the then Prime Minister, Raila Amollo Odinga, who was leading the process, tried to make sure that those who were leaving the Mau were compensated, and that is true. It is also true that he did not get the support within government. Unfortunately, the William Samoei Ruto then, instead of siding with Raila so that people can be compensated, joined the bandwagon of opposing the evictions completely. So you had Raila on this side saying, let them leave, but let them be compensated. You had those, especially in Treasury, who are saying there's nothing like compensation. Let them just leave. And then you had those, the politicians from the region saying they should not leave at all. And the battle was lost. Unfortunately, 10 years down the line, those devils have come back to haunt us. And right now, you now have the core government led by the minister saying they must just leave. There's nothing like compensation.
Thank you.
And then you have the politician, let me just make this point, saying go nowhere. What we should find is the original path that Raila wanted to chart. The politicians from the region should focus on what Senator Wamatangi was saying, okay, if they are leaving, please make sure that they are compensated. Be reasonable, be humane. But if you are not speaking that language, you are losing the plot. The language to be spoken is the language that Raila started in 2009, which was not followed through. If you took just one scandal, I dare think, Dr. Boni Halwale, that if you were, for example, to resolve the Aror Kimarwer Dam scandal, 63 billion, it will be enough to compensate all these people, and we will not be having those kind of problems.
But if we are discussing about illegal title deeds, then how do we compensate? That is another question.
But I said that we should focus on establishing how those titles were
Fantastic.
acquired.
Thank
If
you.
they were illegal, there's no compensation.
no
If they
compensation.
were legal, then there ought to be compensation.
Boni Halole, we need to wind up on
Amollo-
this. We move on to...
Amollo has done so well until towards the end when he became excited. This is a serious matter that requires that we don't get excited in debate. I want to insist that where we have reached is an improvement of where we were in 2009. Because in 2009, the position was the Kibaki side of government didn't want to support the Raila side of government in the Grand Coalition when Raila said, since Parliament has resolved that people be compensated, let us move into the Mau, remove the people as the compensation goes on. I recall in 2003, Amollo, when I was in my office in Arusha, then as an assistant minister of East African Community, we were summoned by the Prime Minister that we should be in the Mau at 7 in the morning. I had to drive from Arusha from 1 a.m. in the morning to make my way to the Mau. And when we arrived there,
209. You said 203. It must be later.
208.
208, yes.
208. When I arrived there, we had expected that we were going to be led by the Prime Minister and President Kibaki. Kibaki never showed up because Kibaki didn't want, I suspect,
to be associated with the politics.
he didn't want people to be compensated. It is what the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Uhuru, was then calling gaming. But now we have passed that. Even the local leaders from the Mau area, Cheruiyot is here, they are saying, let people be compensated. So since we are agreed on compensation, we should insist on crafting a way forward. To my mind, speaking to the issue of the trust land, the definition is correct, the way Amollo has put it. But what we need to teach our people is that when the land is trust land, it is not meant for settlement, it is not meant to give you food, it is not supposed to give you psychological satisfaction that I'm a wealthy person and successful because I own a piece of land. We should tell them that there are modern ways of getting economic benefit from that land without settling there. There is the international concept, which is now being exercised all over the world in the most progressive democracies, called the concept of carbon credit. So that when you preserve an acre of land, you are compensated, you are given credit, and this credit need not be given to an individual. The credit, the carbon credit, should be given to the county government of Narok. And then the county government of Narok will use that credit because it translates into more wealth for the county government to make a better living for the people of Narok. Now, there's even a more fundamental issue which we are supposed to do as Kenyans. We must teach our children that ownership of land is not the only measure of success and being rich. It is not the only pathway. We need to teach our children that you can still be successful as a doctor without owning land, an engineer, an IT expert, a communication expert like you without actually owning land. And let me give you examples. Some of the richest people in this country today, they don't own land. Manu Chandaria, for example, he doesn't have tracts of land. He has developed into the manufacturing industry. They are a very successful family. The Merali, the people of Bidco, even the James Mwangi. I think James Mwangi's wealth is not drawn from land. It is drawn from his intellectual property and what he's doing in the banking sector. We need to teach our children. And then finally, it is the issue of the policy on land tenure. The land tenure in this country is such that everybody feels he must get a piece of land, be it of a family or whatever it is that he is part of. This has led to subdivision upon subdivision of land to the extent that land is continuing to be valueless. We need to have a firm paradigm shift on land tenure to the extent that the people you are seeing in the picture settling in the Mau. These people should be taken to Narok, where proper housing, schools, and other facilities are built, and they are not allowed to resort back to the land.
Thank you.
Developed countries like in Britain, you go there, most of the populations are in urban centers. It has allowed their governments to make proper use of the land that would have otherwise been settled on.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Wamatangi, and we wind up with Wamatangi on this. Yes.
You know, Dibal, I think it's been prosecuted well and proper. Point I wanted to make finally is on that concept of or idea of compensation, and that's why I sought to replace that term compensation with mitigation. Because if we stick to that interpretation of compensation, whereby you be seeking the legal, you'd ask yourself, Dibal, supposing there was an earthquake in any of the parts of this country, and there's all those many people they are affected. Maybe there's a fault line that has cracked like it does many times around that area of Narok. Would you go and ask people who are your title deeds for you to be either resettled or given habitat by your own government? You'd not go seeking title deeds. And that's why I used the scenario that we had in 0708 as a good case reference, whereby government finally finds itself facing its own people directly in a situation unprecedented, and there has to be answers to that situation. And that's what you'd be looking at. Otherwise, you know, if we boil it down to sieving the legalities and illegalities, when we have already admitted, even by those reports and by even all statements made by those in the know, including the owners, that there have been illegalities, there was informal settlement, there was encroachment, which are all things that happened, and they happened when there was a government that was there. It is the citizens of this country that did it. So we find ourselves facing that wall. So how do we pull down that wall and get our people through? That's the answer. That's why I said, let's not necessarily just straitjacket it into discussing of how do you compensate. Let's ask how do we mitigate this situation. And if that was so, and that's why I've finalized my contribution with asking politicians, actually, I would request politicians to keep out of it. But also say firmly to government, this is not, it's not stones and rocks or that you're dealing with or aliens or primates. These are human beings with a life, with families. And they expect, as per our constitution, to get fair treatment and enjoy their rights as per the constitution of Kenya, irrespective of some of those things. So we'd be saying then, find a proper, smooth way of transiting, restore the forest, restore our water towers, let's get what we had. But of course our people must live. We cannot say that their lives or their livelihoods take second place just because we want to correct a situation. The two must move hand in hand. And it has got to be done properly. And of course, the posturing is not helpful, either from the politicians, neither even from the cabinet secretary. It is important that even when they speak with finality and firmness as to the action, they also then balm that by saying, but we will and we are dealing with the situation, knowing that we have people, they are Kenyans, and this is the solution that we're going to give. But you must go, this is how you'll go, and this is where you'll go.
Thank you,
That's how it should work out.
Right, thank you. We just also have reactions from Twitter. Banada Makumbi is saying, I agree with Kibani Wamatangi 100%. Please circle back to him. He's making a lot of sense today. We did that. Also, Roba is saying, as much as I feel the effects of the evacuation, I feel like taking that panel to see for themselves how my people are killing this water tower. Mara River is almost facing extinction. We have also Pre-Ants Nicholas saying, Amollo, you're right there. Human rights-based approach must be taken. I think this is the litmus test. The politicians who want to advance their political agenda using the Mao should use this, not stopping the eviction. Obunga is saying Mao complex conservation is turning into a Tanga versus Kieleweke. Kenyan politicians know it all. Why can't they leave this issue to professionals? In Kenya, we have enough environment and humanitarian professionals. This is what Obunga Apamo thinks. We have Festus saying, Festus thinks that you're too young. This guy is too young to articulate historical issues like the Mau. Trustlands are equally part of the fragile ecosystem of every water tower, open glades as well. This is what Festus Kiplagat thinks. Also, we have, this is just me wondering what is going on here. Why are the Palinist lips not in sync with what they're saying? I will rectify that. This is from, also we have Kennedy Omogi saying we should balance between the environment and the people, because the tail end of the same people, the same people will die from severe drought. Also we have Marago. I totally agree with Boni Mtetezi on whether trust lands are meant to be settlement lands, and that Boni's direction is the way to go. Kiprono, he says, this is Kiprono Abraham Kogo, the issue of Mau Forest is very sensitive, that it shouldn't be left in the hands of activists. The current verbal exchanges is dangerous to a fragile cohesion, I should say, between communities living there. As we strive to conserve environment, human dignity is vital. And Aaron Cheriot came with these documents. I think also this will be.
Also read this one.
Which is this?
There's a young man here called Jamsur Kips. He's saying, we live in a dangerous nation where a government official can wake up one day and cancel your birth certificate and the whole nation and the media will believe that you are never born. Should I say more?
Should you say more? We have also Philip Mbithi Kiswi saying that Otende Amollo is coming out, let me just try, he's coming out so well on this matter. It's unfortunate some people have always dragged in politics in a matter as sensitive as reclaiming Mau. Kenya is increasingly becoming food insecure because of decrease of forest cover. Let me just also try and pick one last one from here as well. Just try and see what lastly they're saying. We have Tato is saying, pose this question to your panel. Have things changed? It now seems the people supporting DP who were once in government are now in the opposition, and the people like Amollo are now in government. All right, maybe she's saying this with tongue family in Chik. Amollo, you want to defend yourself on that?
There's nothing to defend.
There's nothing to defend.
I'm with Raila on this, as I was in 2009, as I am now. Let people leave the Mau. If it is possible, compensate them. That is the position that we took in 2009. That is the position I still take now. Right. And I've articulated it here.
Right, thank you. Also, don't remain none the wiser as far as the Mau is concerned. There are documents and documents upon documents about the Mau complex. Report of the government's task force on the conservation of the Mau forest complex. This is way back in March 2009. Right? If we just show this. This is one of them. And we have Annex 1 and Annex 2.
All the way to Annex 8.
All the way to Annex 8.
Yeah.
They're all here. This is the first one that came out. And then we have the Annex 1 and 2, the report of government's task force on the conservation of Mau. So this is Annex 1. We followed by Annex 1 and 2. And Annex 3 is here, 4 and 5. And 5 and 8 as well, until up to 8. They're all here. So if you want to get to understand what it's all about, then we promised we were winding up on it.
Sure, but you know,
what is it again,
quickly on some of these task forces, you know, one would really want to request, when we have a task force on a matter like the Mau, you know, when you produce a document, 1, Annex 2, Annex 10, I mean, compress it and condense it into a workable
executive summary.
You know, something that you can give to the people. How do you expect people to go and members of the Mau and go and read up to Annex 8 on matters that are affecting them on a 1,000-page document? And you have just been asked to resolve something so simple. You know, I mean, give straightforward solutions that can be executed immediately. I suspect, because that's a 2009 report, I suspect that is even why now you still have the same problem that you're having. If it was something that was workable, that is, you know, brief, simple, to the point, and give direct and true solutions, then we would not be having the problem.